All right, guys, good morning. Thanks for coming out. My name is Ernest Andrade, Director of the CDC. You know, we do these every month, and we vacillate back and forth between technical topics and business topics. This kind of sits right in the middle between kind of a business and technical, you know. And today we have Russell Miller, who's going to go first, who is Software Development Manager at Jack Russell Software, actually, Tabula Rasa Healthcare. I have to. They've gone through 3 iterations.
Confusing,
so,
yeah.
You know, so
We've got three different
and all good on the way up, I might add. So it was Tom Wilson, I guess, who started Jack Russell and then became Carkinesis, and now is Tabula Rasa, which is a holding company with a lot of healthcare innovation that's going on. It's terrific. And talking about Jack Russell, there's going to be some interesting news that's going to be coming in the next couple of weeks, I guess 3 weeks, about the company. So, and then we have Mindy Taylor. Many of you guys already know Mindy Taylor, who is now the CEO of Conceptual. And I'll let Mindy talk about the company, Conceptual, in her introduction. We're going to let Russell go first, and then we're going to go through, and then Mindy. But it's kind of a quick introduction to Slack. This is kind of timely because this is something that we're going to start using in our after-school program, CodeCamp after-school program that we just announced in the fall. And there's going to be channels for teachers, channels for students, and that kind of thing. So I don't know a thing about it. So when our technical guy, basically the CDC, Joe Bryan, said, "Hey, I'd like to know more about Slack," I was like, "Okay, let me make a couple of calls." So without further ado, Russell, I'll let you take it from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ernest. How's everyone doing this morning?
Good. Great.
Thanks for taking the time to come listen. My name's Russell Miller. I am the 4th, so that's pretty important. My dad would not want you to confuse me for him. Although his email is almost the same as mine, and I get pretty much all of his emails, so I think it's sabotage. So let's get started. Who am I? I am from Baltimore. Came down here, College Charleston, went to business school, nothing to do with technology really. Was fortunate enough to meet Tom Wilson. Ernest kind of spoke a little bit about him, but you may know Tom. Tom's a pretty instrumental person in Charleston tech community, big innovator, does a lot of community events and actually has been a big part of the flagship here and the digital corridor. Does some teaching, and as Ernest mentioned, is now going to be taking on for our company an innovation center. So there'll be some more educational opportunities for the community. Awesome guy. Like I said, if you don't know him, I'm sure you might have heard about him if you've been in the Charleston tech community. Tom was basically my mentor and kind of took me on out of college and basically turned me into a programmer. And like I said, had no experience, so this was supposed to be a kid, but I guess my picture is covering up that. So anyway, I was a junior programmer. Over the course of a couple of years, I became a senior programmer, and I kind of liken that more to my, I guess, process skills and what I did with my company and my leadership skills. Technically, I would say I wasn't the best programmer, but this essentially led to me implementing some stuff for our teams that really helped improve them, and it was only fitting that I became this awesome Scrum Master. So basically implemented Scrum for our team and then our greater company as far as our development shop. So that is actually what I looked like when I was the Scrum Master walking in every day. I have more of a neck than that guy though, a little bit. So this is me now. I am a software development manager. Google did not give me any good images for software development manager, so I figured this looked kind of badass, even though it's about a 6-inch shark. But so software development manager, new role for me. Like I said, I'm kind of taking over Tom's position here in Charleston. So basically, just quick recap of our company, where we are. 2009, I started with Jack Russell Software. Tom actually founded it in 2007, and at the point of 2009, there was 4 of us. we got acquired by Kinesis. We became their sole dev shop. We then built an umbrella company called Tabula Rasa, and now our IT department is about 40 plus people, and we're expanding pretty rapidly. So we do medication management solutions and risk mitigation and a whole lot of really cool stuff with DNA and technology, but I won't bore you guys. So finally, let's get into Slack. Was talking with Mindy and not entirely sure what the audience was going to be as far as technical level, so hopefully this isn't too high level as far as just a general discussion. I'm more than happy to get into some of the more technical details about integrations and stuff if needed, but just to kind of go through the overview, does anyone use Slack currently? All right, so we have, okay, about half. Cool. So what is Slack? You may have seen the awesome commercials of, animals and sloths just running around with, umbrellas on their heads, and it's a pretty good commercial if you haven't seen it. But realistically, it's a central hub for communication for teams. It does a lot of stuff. You have communication, it's probably the principal part of it, but there's a lot more like file sharing, alerting, messaging. You can integrate tools with it. Has comprehensive search. It's kind of like a one-stop area for a lot of stuff that a team would need to collaborate. So let's see. It's definitely not the first communication tool, and it surely won't be the last, but clearly Slack is doing something right. They have, as of April, 2.7 million daily users. 800,000 of them are paid users, and I'll show you their pay scale in a second, but that's a pretty good chunk of change. They're also evaluated at $3.7 billion right now, so pretty insane. They clearly have some awesome things coming up, and really feel like this is going to be something that is going to be just universal. So really what's that great about it? Like I mentioned, if there have been other tools that have essentially done this, why Slack? So one thing that I felt as far as when, as a company, we were looking for tools to kind of help our team collaborate and have a central spot where we can discuss and document and upload files and all this other myriad of things, the setup was extremely easy. It's literally, if anyone has worked with Jira, maybe some of the more technical people, if you've ever set it up, it is absolutely insanely complicated. And you have so many configurations that it's just a frustration. This Slack has some complexity, but you can really simplify everything, and you can easily set it up for a team in less than a day, and it depends on how many people you have on your team. So that's something they absolutely nailed. It's really easy to get into it, and it's really easy to start using. The UI is another huge aspect about it. You can really have no experience with kind of a chat tool, and you can jump in, and it's really intuitive. So for those kind of a couple reasons, it was kind of a no-brainer once we started using it, how easy it was for even the non-technical people to jump into it. So one of the other things is configurable notifications. We had essentially had some other chat client tools. We actually went through a handful of them, but all of them became just this jumble of noise, and you would constantly get emails notifying you that you missed a message, or you would constantly get these pop-up notifications that someone's talking, and when you have 60 people in one chat room, that becomes pretty annoying and distracting and kind of counterproductive. So one of the cool things that at the time when we were evaluating Slack was not necessarily something with the other tools, was this concept of being able to manage notifications at each of the channel levels. And for those of you that don't know what channels are, it's kind of like a chat room. So you can have a group of people and you can have topics that are different channels that you can essentially, have people join. So if you were, a tech team, you could have one that's, discussion for UI, you could have one that's a discussion for a certain product. It's really up to you. You can set it up in kind of any way that you want. There's also this concept of direct messaging. So if I wanted to talk just to John, I can legitimately, have just a chat between us. And it's private. You can also have private channels that only people that are invited to them can join, or you can have public channels. So if you don't know all about that, I would suggest you can just go on and learn more about it on their website. But the point here is you literally can curate each of those channels to say, don't notify me every time. I don't want to hear every single message that comes through. But if someone mentions my name or if someone mentions this word, then notify me. So you really can make it a lot less noisy while still getting extreme value out of it, because not everything's important, right? So this was definitely one of the key things for us. Integrations. Cool thing about Slack, and this isn't new to team chat tools, but integrations, especially in tech teams, but it doesn't necessarily have to be tech teams, is huge. Our team has a dozen or so integrations that we have implemented with our Slack, and we have stuff like PagerDuty, which if one of our services goes down in production, it will automatically put a message into one of our Slack channels that says, XYZ is down, and it actually will ping one of us. So we get it on our phone and we look at it and know right away. Some of the other cool things that we've done are, for any of you that are familiar with GitHub, we have all of our commits actually log in our Slack. So we have a channel strictly for commits, and if you're on a team, you can easily see in one place, the commits that are coming through, comments that are being made, deploys that are happening. Obviously, we've integrated it with Jenkins too, our CI server. So kind of the point here is, you have a central area in this tool to really monitor everything that you're doing. Even if you're not tech, you can connect it with Twitter, you can connect it with other productivity tools. So there are, I want to say, thousands of different integrations that you can use with Slack, and you can actually make your own too. So one of the other really important things for us as a company, and for most companies, I would say, that especially companies that have distributed workers, is a sense of culture, and how do you maintain that culture, especially when you have people in New Mexico, when you have people in Philadelphia. Our parent company, Tabula Rasa, is based out of Morristown, New Jersey, which is just outside of Philly. So literally the Charleston team is just the developers, and we actually have distributed developers too. So our IT department is predominantly in New Jersey. So there's definitely this complexity about how we communicate, how we keep, camaraderie and culture. So Slack was by far one of the best tools that I've experienced in cultivating this. We have a lot of rooms that we talk business about, but we also have rooms where we joke around and we chat and we kind of have lighthearted discussions. I leading up to using Slack, I don't think I had ever used an emoji ever, and I would say that I am probably the king of emojis and look for ways to have conversations using emojis. So this is a pretty common thing. That was one of our fellow employees is from the UK. So when the whole Brexit thing was going down, we were making fun of him. So clearly you can see we would deport Brett, and it happened to be around the 4th of July, so everything just fit.
Can you interpret that?
If the market goes down and money has wings, then the United States should deport Brett and assert that it's 4th of July. So we have I mentioned bots. Slack comes with its own Slack bot. I'll get into this in a bit, but it's essentially its own integrated bot, and you can use that to do a lot of cool things, a lot of integrations, a lot of, it's kind of endless, but we simply use it because we have a different bot, but we simply use it just to do some like triggers on words. So they're kind of triggered responses. So when we say lunch, that pops up automatically. And I really don't know how the dolphin got in there, but yeah, I'll have to ask about that one. So finally, one of the other things that I don't know if this is common or not, but we have, these things are called reactions down here. And it's really something, I mean, as all of you know, in this tech age of communication and stuff, sometimes like it's not easy to talk over a computer, basically. So, your feelings and emotions sometimes aren't conveyed appropriately, and it gets you in trouble. So, another reason why I'm king of emojis, because I'm always making sure that I'm adding a smiley face or something to make sure people know that I'm not mad. But one of the other things is these reactions, which I think are really cool, and it makes it really fun too, because you can add a reaction to something that someone says. So you'll see a count, and that's 3 people clicked the wine glass, 2 people. So it's just another little fun thing, but it really, we live on Slack all day. So, I could be sitting at home in my PJs and literally, I feel like I'm in the office chatting with people, and that's really one of the key things about Slack, and really any kind of chat tool. But they do a good job of making sure that culture is cultivated. So I mentioned Slackbot. We replaced Slackbot with Wilbur. Wilbur is our resident dog. We are Jack Russell Software, so it was only fitting to name him Wilbur, which was Tom's dog, which is Jack Russell Software, which is, a Jack Russell Terrier. So Wilbur is our kind of, if you guys are familiar with Hubot, Hubot's something that GitHub created to do a lot of their integration stuff. And we essentially use Wilbur to do a lot of that stuff as well. Wilbur, we can talk to Wilbur and give it commands for deployments. We can tell Wilbur that we are going to ship it, and he responds with a squirrel dressed up. It's not always this one. It could be any number of things. And then we have other things that we integrate with Wilbur, and we can say, image me, a piranha, and suddenly an image of a piranha pops up. So more culture things, but actually there are business tools behind it that we use for our daily routine with, developing and maintaining some of our services. So one of the key parts, how am I doing on time, by the way?
Doing great.
All right. One of the other key things that this was by far and away a leader in kind of the chat tools that we used, or at least tested and experimented. Slack has nailed their mobile tool, and we can literally leave our computer, and if we have Slack on our phone, it's like we haven't left. Which is really useful because it's extremely intuitive. If you have to run and get lunch or something, you're still in touch if you need to be. So they just did a really good job. If you use Slack and you haven't gotten the mobile app, definitely give it a shot. So I mentioned, and I keep mentioning, that we tested out a bunch of different chat tools, and we went from HipChat to Campfire, which is Basecamp, Campfire. We had Lynx, I think that's the Microsoft one. All of them were not really fulfilling what we needed, and as a development shop, and this wasn't a complete need for the whole IT, but something that we had been using prior to using Slack was Screen Hero. And Screen Hero is a screen collaboration tool that it's a screen sharing tool, but it's also a collaboration tool. So if you've ever used GoToMeeting, you can give someone presenter ability. They can, control your mouse. This is much better. This, you can have someone, you can have two mouses. You can basically both be controlling someone's computer at the same time. So we do pair programming, if you're familiar with that. When we're remote, it makes it a little bit more challenging because you're not actually sitting next to someone sharing the same screen. This gives us the ability to legitimately sit there, and two people can be working on the same thing when they're, across the country from each other. So extremely useful tool. Slack made a great business move, and they bought Screen Hero. So in order to use Screen Hero, you now have to use Slack. So when we were evaluating our tools, we literally said, this is a game changer for us, and we presented that to our company and said, this is where we're going. Until you find another solution, we have to use Slack, among other reasons, but it was a good reason for us to use it. They're supposed to be doing some other things with Slack based on Screen Hero, but you can still use it. Excuse me. You can still use it if you use Slack, even the free version. And Slack has done a lot of other cool integration stuff with, they have a chat now, like an actual voice. You can bring up calls. You could be literally in the chat room and say, hey, let's jump on a call real fast, and ping the 3 people that are in the room, and literally slash call, and then those people's name, and it'll start up a call, and you'll be voice over IP with them. So I think that's kind of the direction they're moving. They'll definitely keep this tool, but extremely useful tool for us. So let's see some of the hard facts. I don't know. I copied these from their website, so if you guys really care to get too in depth with them, you can go check them out yourself. But as far as productivity, they did this themselves, so clearly they're going to make it look awesome as far as what the results are. Productivity, based off of a survey, they said that 32% are 20 to 40% more productive using Slack. I wouldn't argue that. Another cool couple facts, reducing internal email, keyword internal. I would agree with this. I think that this Slack has replaced, in a lot of ways, internal email for us. There's really no reason to use email, especially if you don't like your email service, and I'm not the biggest fan of Outlook. So we literally have a history. We have a searchable trail on Slack. You can find things extremely easy, and every conversation is documented. So even though I might just need to talk to Jenny, if I do it in a public room, everyone can see it, everyone can chime in, they can choose on whether or not they want to read it, but it's a lot more visible, a lot more transparent, which is definitely important, especially in the tech world and really in any business, because transparency is key. You might not think you need to know this, but if you know it, you might be that much more better off in the long run. Reducing meetings, that's definitely probably about accurate as well. So for us, there are some barriers and downfalls as far as Slack goes. It is pricey. So one of the things that Slack was extremely smart about is it's free. It's free for anyone, and it's free for as many people as you want. But there are some stipulations. You can only have a certain amount of service integrations. you can only have, 10,000 messages searchable. So if you're kind of a bigger team, you kind of almost get forced into the second tier or maybe after that. So with the standard, you can't see it, but it's actually, if you do it monthly, it's $8 a person. So that's kind of pricey, but some may argue that it's worth it. Depends on, if you look at the productivity things, you can easily justify it. And there are a lot of benefits and a lot of automated tools that you can put in place that will save you time anyway, and time is money. So really, it's what is valuable to you. One of the other problems for us being in healthcare is it's not HIPAA compliant. They have talked about this. They also have the enterprise version, but it's not really understood whether that's going to be part of it or not. This is a big problem for us. So if you're in the government sector or you're in healthcare, this is kind of a problem. Because while we try our best not to slip, there have been times that you post something that you're not supposed to. So obviously internally hosted tools are more ideal in a situation like that. So I'll quickly go back to this because I think there's some things to note here. If you notice the 0 to 20 and the none, together those are about 36%. So about 36% say that they're only 0 to 20% more productive. Depending on how you set up Slack, it can be extremely distracting. Like I mentioned before, you can have countless messages popping up all throughout the day about things that you don't need to worry about. So there are some things that Slack has done to combat this. You can put a snooze button on, which will prevent you from getting messages. You can also curate your notifications, like I mentioned. But again, it's a lot going on depending on how many channels you have. It literally could be just nonstop reading of Slack messages all day if that's what you really wanted to do with your day. Another thing is, especially in the programming world, is accountability. While it's great, it really can be kind of a challenge too, because literally at any point in the day, someone can get in touch with you. So if someone's looking for you, they have a direct access to get to you. And email, for those of you that program, we might check it in the morning and then we might check it when we leave. And that was a good way of shutting down and being able to just be heads down and work. So this kind of adds a different level of accountability to it, which, like I said, can be good, but sometimes it's bad if you use it incorrectly.
Within your culture, has there been any establishment of boundaries?
We're getting there.
In regards to saying, hey, my Slack shuts off at such and such time.
Yeah. And there are rules that, in Slack, you can, in certain channels and stuff, you can notify the entire channel and it'll actually ping them and stuff like that. So there are boundaries that we've put in place as a team to say, only do this under these circumstances.
You mean ground rules of the use of it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There's also a way that you can say that I'm only going to receive messages between this time and this time.
Yep.
So like at nighttime at 9 o'clock, you will not get any more messages until the next morning.
Yep, absolutely.
But I will say that for it to really work effectively, though, it helps to have the organization have some principles around makers versus managers, because managers are fine being interrupted all the time. The
Sure.
makers, the programmers, are the ones who really...
And those are the issues that we're trying to manage a little bit more right now, because it can be, like I said, if you have that direct access, it's so much easier to just say, hey, and distract someone and get the answer that you need, as opposed to, maybe waiting or asking them at a later time. So those are kind of the things that I see as problems. One other one is competition. As far as what I previously mentioned, Slack is not the only tool there are a bunch of other ones, and there are ones that are half the price, there are ones that are free, there are ones that are internally hosted. Rocket Chat and Mattermost are both open source, so you can host them yourself. They run pretty closely with functionality of Slack, so they're definitely giving Slack a run for its money, but again, it's based off of your needs. So you do have to maintain it yourself. You do have to host it yourself, and a bunch of other things. So there are downfalls to those as well. What else? I think that was it for that one. So if you have never used it before, I would suggest you try it out. There's an awesome local community, Charleston Tech Slack, that you can join, and there are 722 registered members as of now. They've got some channels in there for local events, just some general discussion, some other things. So if you're interested and you're curious how Slack works and you want to just kind of be an observer or get into it, I suggest going there. If you go to that URL, you can enter in your email and they'll send you an invite. So, questions?
So,
Yes.
Like when we were at a previous place I worked, we were using, we would sign up and we would use like Google Chat, and we would create like 3 or 4 different names depending on whether it was our personal and whether it was our work one or whatever. Would you want to use Slack like that, or would you want to use your work one for, like I'm thinking about the Charleston Tech Slack as well.
So I can show you. Slack has a cool little way of allowing you to manage, well, at least on the actual native app. Let me pull it over here. You can join multiple groups. So, or teams is what they're called. And so this is our work one. This is the Charleston Tech one. So, and then I have another one, and you could have as many as you want. So that's the way that you can have multiple. Okay. So you can have your company one, and then you can also join any other ones that you want. And there are tons of teams, communities popping up. So if you like, JavaScript, there's one for JavaScript. If you like, something other.
Yeah. So the functionality you'd have would be depending on which one you were using. Like if your company subscribed to one of the larger plans.
They are separate accounts.
Right.
So I think for this one I used my personal email. For this one I think it's my company email. So you can configure them differently. You can have notifications completely differently. I think on this Charleston one, since there are so many people, and it's literally a constant stream of discussion, I don't have any notifications on it. I think the only way that I get notified if someone literally says @Russell and pings me. So, yeah.
Let's do this. Let's jump into Mindy's presentation because she might answer some of the questions that are going to be asked, and we'll save some time for questions at the end of Mindy's presentation. So if y'all don't mind, just so we keep things on track. Russell, that was terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey everybody,
All right.
how's it going?
Awesome.
Russell said this is the biggest group he's spoken to so
Yeah.
far, and I was like, man, that was damn
Oh,
good.
well done.
Thank you.
There we go. Well, I see a few familiar faces in the room, but also a lot of people I don't know. So while I'm getting this opened up here, do a little introduction.
Many of y'all probably don't remember the day when we had to get there like 20 minutes early to set up a PowerPoint. And then hope it worked. Jeez,
All right.
come a long way.
Yeah, so my name's Mindy Taylor. Before I joined Conceptual, I moved to Charleston about 3 years ago. and started consulting with various startups, and most recently, before Conceptual, worked with one in particular that went through the Harbor Accelerator program. Had a really fun, lean, and challenging year. I think fun's always an interesting word to use with startups, right? It's mostly a blend of like awful and hard and amazing, like very small parts of amazing. But a great opportunity to kind of like pitch and work with a product from beginning to end, you know, really hustling through, talking to customers, designing the product, selling the product. Had an awesome opportunity to win Wild Pitch at Dig South last year. Pitched to Steve Case, the founder of AOL, won an investment from him for $100,000. Was invited to the White House at the end of last summer to pitch at White House Demo Day, which was their very first version of Demo Day. Didn't actually get to meet the president, was disappointed about that, but we were very close, so it was a cool experience. You know, we had that opportunity because Herbie Zeiskin, who runs Revolution up in DC, which is Steve Case's investment arm, kind of made a phone call and said, hey, you know, Mindy, would you guys be interested in coming to the White House? And I said, that's a question you answer yes to, right? So had the opportunity in September of last year to come to Conceptual, and couldn't pass it up. And so that tell you a little bit about the background of Q and what we do. So Conceptual was founded by Dale Estraco. We're an agile development shop. I'll get to Dale and the guys here shortly. We design and build products for web, mobile, and connected devices in both the public and private sectors. We have about 50% commercial work, 50% government work. On the commercial side, we partner with VC firms, build early stage products. We work with larger brands like Bridgestone, VW, Everest up in Boston. So it really kind of spans the gamut on the commercial side. About 10 people on that team. The other half of the company, we work in the government space. So we have contracts with the VA, the Department of Defense, SPAWAR, and the Naval Facilities Command. We just recently got facilities clearance, so we do some of that high-level government work, which, as you guys know, those are two different worlds, so it's nice to kind of play in both. So just to tell you a little bit about our technology leadership, you know, we're very lean on the business side, which is a good thing. We're primarily an engineering shop. So Dale Estraco was one of the first 20 members at a company called Spark, who in this room has heard of Spark before, everybody? Okay. So Dale was the very first lead engineer on VBMS, which is the primary project at Spark. Ramped up a team of 150 engineers, reported directly to the White House on that project. Got kind of bored a little bit with the government side and helped grow Spark's commercial division, and figured if he had done it for them, he could probably do it for himself. So he left it to start Conceptual. As he was kind of filing those documents, he went and had research and development for Starwood Hotels up in New York. So worked on their very first, some of the very first Google Glass integration, right? I think that was when Google Glass was actually cool. It's not anymore. Worked on the very first Apple iWatch app, SVG keyless. So all of that cool kind of connected devices stuff. Coded, you know, those experiences when a guest arrives at a hotel using beacon technology to sense that that person has arrived, automatically assigning the room key via that app. You don't have to go to the front desk. It automates and remembers like your drink orders from previous times. So it's really about kind of connecting people to that experience. Came back and to Charleston after a year and having, you know, about 6 employees and kind of ramped up. And so we then brought on John Geislink, who also used to be at Spark. He is our Chief Technology Officer, and he works primarily on the government side of the house. And right around the time I joined Conceptual, we were lucky enough to get a guy named Chaz Peacock. Chaz is our commercial engineering VP. He comes to us from Austin, 15 years in Austin. I'd say the one reason we probably have him is because he does have a family connection to Charleston. Otherwise, I don't know that we would be that lucky. Where do we go here? So it'll come up eventually. So Chaz, he leads our commercial side of the shop and really works to bring that depth of experience from Austin, which is, as we know, a much more sophisticated tech environment than Charleston. So it's great to kind of have some of that depth come over and really grow up our engineering team. There we go. All right. So let's talk a little bit about Slack. I think it's going to seem like Russell and I coordinated this prior because I'm going to talk about some different things. So I think we'll just give credit to Ernest for choosing people that would kind of touch two different areas. So as we know, Slack can be kind of a funny interactive tool. We use it a lot for interaction and jokes, stuff like, Q's favorite Chrome plugin, which replaces the word cloud with but every time you see it on the web. So there's, of course, a lot of maturity on Slack channels, right? But it makes it fun to Russ's point about the culture. And then, to echo a little bit, I won't go too much into it since, you covered it. We use, obviously, a lot of the integrations with Bitbucket and GitHub and CodeShip. And what that really does for us is help us manage the process from beginning to end. And even on the business side, when we're able to say, hey, let's work in some automated testing for our code and products so that by the time it gets pushed to production, we get notifications, both from a QA side and from a client side. So these tools are integral to our entire process from the tech side. And as you mentioned, we've got also Jira to help manage our process, but you touched on this as well. Jira is incredibly difficult to manage. It's very engineering focused, which is fantastic, but from a client perspective, from an accessibility perspective, it's great to have something that feels a little more accessible. So what these really do first to kind of like talk a little bit about how I view Slack. So a big thing with like engineering and task and management, there's a lot of managers in the room, is, we want to establish a culture that's, based on performance, but also kind of gives people the freedom to work in the style they want to. So what I really find is that Slack allows us at a high level to come into a channel and really see fully what our team has been up to. So I don't have to go to my engineers at the end of the day and say, hey, what did you get done today? Tell me about the project. Were there any problems? I don't have to kind of burden them with that conversation either throughout the day or at the end of the week. I can simply go to that Slack channel. I can see, okay, it's cool to see how they talk through that issue, how they handled that problem, kind of go through that so that I'm not pinging the engineers throughout the day, who's an engineer in the room? Raise your hand. So you guys, you need to be heads down and focused, and interruptions can be a problem for engineers. So it's great coming from the business side. I don't have to kind of enter into your world and bother you throughout the day. So, and to echo a little bit of tracking communications, it's when you have so many team members and you want everyone to be in the loop, the carbon copy is like just my least favorite thing in the world, right? It's like you feel like the obligation to CC people on communications, you want everyone to be in the loop, but you're thinking, am I leaving everyone out? Or am I leaving anyone out? Do I have the right people CC'd? Is this the wrong person to include on the conversation? Is so-and-so going to feel left out if I don't include them on the conversation? So if you have everyone in that one central channel, that kind of eliminates any decision making you have to make for your communication. So it's just a lot more streamlined. So the other thing too is, we use Gmail as our email provider. And Gmail's a great email tool. I don't have any problems with it, but in terms of kind of going back and looking at conversations, the searchability function is just not quite there, right? So the ability to kind of pop through a conversation instead of looking at every sort of like timestamp and email signature and having to kind of scroll through, it's a much more comprehensive way to be able to kind of track that entire conversation. So search functionality as well, and then we've got, in my mind, one of the big focuses at Conceptual is lessening the gap between our clients and the development process. So a lot of software developers tend to sort of add a lot of mystery to what it is that we do, right? Because it's sort of like we want to feel like it's this kind of special hierarchy of skills that maybe some clients don't have, but we have. And it's kind of all about being able to establish that sense of need. We shift the focus a little bit. We want to be able to say, we want to very clearly explain to you what's happening in the development process. And then we want to provide tools and processes that give you instant access to that information. So we set up a Slack channel for each of our projects and our clients, right? We invite those clients, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that, even blocking other channels so they can just be a part of one channel. But what this does is it kind of like establishes that warm and fuzzy feeling with clients, right? A lot of times the concept of software development is really hard to point to and see something happening, right? It's not like building a table where you see tangible pieces kind of come together. So clients being able throughout the day to just pop on a Slack feed and monitor and see the code commits, see the conversations, see the QA happening, see all the problems that are being solved. It lets them tangibly view kind of the process and be able to attach that to what your team is doing and kind of establish a philosophy around their product. So it really helps us kind of have that relationship with clients throughout the day even. And it seems like this kind of communication project where you have project managers, and at the end of a sprint review or at the end of the week, there's an email update, which is fantastic. But throughout the week, people want more. They expect more communication. So having that ability to include them before that main summary email, which is just really going to fill up their inbox anyway, they may not want to read the entire thing. This allows us to really kind of add a sense of tangibility to the process. So the other thing I like about Slack is the contextual nature. So, as you know, emails and I think computers in general, people have a tendency to kind of hide behind a keyboard, and it's really difficult to kind of sense emotions and sense expression and what people mean by things, right? So you see kind of like a curt response in an email that's not contextual, and it's harder to follow the conversation. And like, this is a really silly example, but I see a message like this on our Slack channel, and I have no idea what Chaz means until I scroll up and see that he's talking about Pokemon like every other person in the country right now. So because of the compact nature of it, and we're all very quick in communications, you're able to sort of monitor and protect the sensitivity of communications among your team and with clients. So having the ability to very quickly see, oh, I see what he meant by that, right? And not having to kind of suppose what was implied by that conversation is pretty big for our team. So a lot of integrations, to Russell's point, but one of my favorites that I use, we've got a lot that we use on the project management and code side, is a tool called MailClark. MailClark used to be called Clubble.io, I believe, and recently was acquired and is in a new beta version. So I like this a lot because there's a lot of people that maybe are not acclimated to Slack yet, and it's kind of hard to get them on as users. So for a lot of my clients, they're a little bit more traditional, which in our case can be true, even if it's kind of like higher level stakeholders that need to be connected to the project. MailClark allows you to connect people via email. So if you invite them via email, you reply back, they're going to get that as an email if they don't want to download Slack on their computer. And then when they respond, you get their response into your Slack channel. So consistency is huge. To echo what Russell said, it's the ability to be able to establish one central form of communication. So I like to live in Slack as much as possible because my inbox gets pretty crazy. So if I can enforce that by telling my clients, cool, it's fine, I'm not going to sell you on the philosophy of Slack. If you don't want to do it, that's great. But I have this plugin that allows me to continue in that fashion, and then also allows everybody on my team to see those client communications, which for me is really big, right? As engineers, how many of you prefer talking to the client? Yeah. There we go. We got one taker. A lot of engineers, and this is sort of our focus at Q, and I'd say a big differentiator is that we want there to be a connection between engineering and clients. The best software is created by people who can ask the right questions, who know how to empathize when it comes to building product, and know the types of questions clients are asking. The thing that my guys hear me say all the time is that if you don't know how to make these products work for someone like your mom, they don't work. So if from an engineering perspective, you're looking through and they're able to see the types of questions my clients ask me, it better orients them to what the products are going to be like once they leave the shop, right? So the code's going to be better. From a user experience perspective, they're going to start to learn to ask those correct questions. You know, even if it's like, it doesn't matter if the question is silly, the fact that it was asked is a reality, right? So this allows me to, I have a client channel that I route all of my client emails to. And all my guys are a part of that, because they are able to see at any time that interaction and the amount of work it takes on the client side to really ensure that the product ends up to be within their vision. So that's really one of my favorite integrations, and there are a ton that we really use on a day-to-day basis. A lot of what Russell already talked about, but primarily for me as someone who doesn't get to participate as much in Slack except on my client channel, I use it to keep track of my team, you know, kind of echoing that point that I was making in the beginning about the ability to be able to monitor activity without inserting yourself in every conversation, you know, interrupting people and requiring updates. For lean companies and for companies that are very busy, that can be a lot of meetings, a lot of time, a lot of conversation that is not always super productive. So the ability for me to go in at the end of the day and kind of at a high level, look at all the conversations. I get to know what's going on with every product. If I've got a client that calls me that maybe isn't the PM and the direct stakeholder, he wants to know how it's going, I like to be able to answer that question. Even though I don't know every single piece about the technology, the ability to kind of go in there and even see that a code commit was just made. I get to say, yeah, actually we were just working on it tonight, and kind of have that information and conversation. So from the non-tech side, it kind of provides that accessibility to both clients and my team, along with just the ability to kind of be a little bit more hands-off from a philosophical approach. That's it for me. Any questions?
Yeah, we've got, you know, comments or questions if you guys have any.
Yeah.
From a customer service perspective, it sounds like you could actually handle all of your email customer service through this tool. It just feeds it in. You can just respond through this, so it replaces some of those other applications.
Yeah, through MailClark, and the other one I use is Zendesk. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Zendesk. Very customizable platform that we use at Conceptual. You can route service requests via Zendesk through this as well. At this point in a stage in our company, we started using Zendesk a little bit. There's a little too much of a gap between the client and it feels a little cold at this stage in our company with 20 employees. So we typically like to give people a kind of a direct contact instead of that info at email address, but you can pretty much route all your clients, all your QA requests. Makes it easier for developers to interact when you're in the QA kind of mode. A lot of people don't feel comfortable in GitHub logging tickets and things like that. It's easier for them to kind of like write in Slack and kind of manage that entire process. And then I can also kind of tag people to take over those concerns.
Hey Mindy, I'm Thomas. I'm the one writing the article.
Hey Thomas.
Nice to meet you. A couple of things. Similar to my question to Russell, has your organization established any type of ground rules or parameters to make it so that Slack is not as distracting and doesn't, cross over into personal time?
Yeah, so thankfully we haven't had much reason to do so yet, and I think it's primarily because we have a very senior team. A lot of our guys have been in the industry for quite some time, and besides sort of some of the silly things that kind of get played out in the general channel, we haven't had many reason to establish rules and parameters at this point. We have a pretty busy product line on the commercial side, so there's actually not that much time for distraction. Primarily, we have a channel for each project, so the rules are more organizational than anything. So at the beginning of a kind of process, we set up a channel for each client and invite the appropriate people to that channel, and then
Do you invite clients to the channel?
we do.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah, so that's a huge part of it for us, is like, and Russell touched on this too, and feel free to hop up here and participate in Q&A, but the transparency is huge for us. So like, I want to see, I want clients to see the level of conversation and difficulty that comes with building products. You know, people on the commercial side are much more high maintenance than they used to be. They want everything to be like Facebook. You know, and they say like, make it do this, right? That'll be easy, right? So I like, if you provide that
It gives them
transparency.
some ownership, basically.
Gives them ownership. It lets them really see the level of difficulty and detail that comes in building enterprise and high-level products. When they start to see all the troubleshooting that happens and all the logic, you know, right now we're building a beacon project. Does everybody know what beacons are? Anyone? So beacons are basically dumb devices. A beacon is just a piece of hardware that just throws up a low Bluetooth energy signal that says, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and it waits for an application to pop by, maybe a mobile app. And so you can kind of organize push notifications based upon that interaction. So there's a lot of intense logic around those notifications, like how many notifications should someone get in a day? You know, what's prohibitive? So that conversation around the logic on some of these higher level platforms lets clients see like, wow, this is why it's so valuable / expensive to build a really high level product.
Just one other quick question. So, you know, I read Stuart Butterfield's interview in Fast Company where he said this being an email killer. Mm-hmm. I mean, what cracked me up, he said if someone in my company sent me an email, I'd probably fire them. So, with regards to their study, that it increases, you know, reduces meetings, reduces email. What's been your experience with your company?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely, and I'd say my percentage is probably a little bit higher than that, and I think it goes back to your point of like enforceability. Unless you're directing people there, and unless you're directing your team and your clients there, it won't happen. Slack isn't a magical button that you press that it will then do everything you know you want it to do. But so it does take your team and everyone making a commitment to drive back to that. So there'll be times when my team members will email me and I'll answer them in Slack, you know, just to kind of retrain, get everyone back. And primarily I do that to protect them because I don't want them to get lost in my inbox. So it's an easy message. And I think Stuart Butterfield is an incredibly interesting guy. And like I'm a humanities person, you know, I have a graduate degree in philosophy, so I'm a recovering academic. And I love, he got a BA in philosophy, and he comes from a humanities background, so it's all about that conversation, right? It comes to technology with these really important questions, and I think it's less about email and more about philosophical conversations around what it means to speak to each other throughout the day. So I think he's got some really unique insights on how to do that. Hey, how are you?
Good. Does your team also use a project management system, and if you do, what does that look like with Slack?
Yeah, we use Jira.
What do they use?
Yeah, we use Jira to track all our engineering actions. The only issue we have with Jira is like, Russell touched on this as well. It is very engineering focused, and it's a fantastic tool. It's not great for everything. So the timekeeping system and task system we use is called MavenLink. I don't know if anyone's heard of MavenLink, but it's actually pretty amazing. I highly recommend it. It has some other project management tools that are more accessible for the non-technical. So a lot of times you'll have tasks that are not Jira specific. So we'll use MavenLink to track some of those, and MavenLink has a Slack integration as well. But Jira we integrate here as well, so we can take the user stories, any updates on the user stories, in addition to the GitHub and Bitbucket commits, so we can see what's going on with that particular story, if it needs to be explored further, if it needs some more client interaction and decisions. So that particular project manager is able to take that user story, tag a client, and say, hey, we need to talk about this more. And so that's how it kind of interacts with Jira.
Mindy, Russell, thanks for presenting today. They'll be around for a little bit, so if you guys have a couple of questions. The PowerPoints will be made available Monday. Mike records them and puts them up, the video. So we want to kind of go back, that's available to you guys as well. I mentioned to you guys, we kind of vacillate between these technical and business topics. I'm just curious, what are the two top issues you guys, let's kind of show of hands, what are the two top two topics basically that the tech community faces from the challenges we face in this community. I'm just curious as to what you guys think. If you were to, let's start with Michael. What do you think, Michael? Top two. I put you on the spot.
Just coming from a startup company, one of the things that in the Charleston community, and that is trying to get new talent into the area. I know that's been a challenge. I've been meeting with lots of companies in the last few months, and that seems to be the one thing they keep asking me. Do you know anyone that we can hire? So I think, building the tech community here, trying to get more people into the area is a big deal for a lot of companies.
Number two, somebody want to volunteer basically this week. We kind of, and I agree with you, that seems to be the assessment, And actually, to that point, we just released an interview with Levi Morehouse. He's the founder and CEO of a company called Ceteris, originally from Michigan, just raised $4.2 million. It's online today. We just put it up a few hours back, and I would encourage you to look at it because he talks about talent in there. It's and if you haven't, these are quiet. It's very interesting with Charleston Tech community. You don't have. I met with the guys from research, Department of Commerce, and they just said, "Who is the voice of tech in Charleston?" And I said, "There isn't one voice because we operate more as a community, and that's the way it should be. It's more democratic." But go back, if you just basically go into news and you hit one of the interviews and just have interviews, you'll see 6, 8 of them. Google was last, Eric Wages, who runs the data center, was the last one. We're going to have Boeing, Brad, who runs the data engineering and IT. The reason I asked that, and anybody want to talk about number two? What do you see as number two issue?
Transparency. Retaining good talent. Once you can get them, keeping them engaged.
Transparency. Like she was talking about the disconnect between client interaction and what's going on, and bridging that gap.
Yeah.
I interview a lot of tech companies, and the number one issue I'm coming across from a business perspective is branding and messaging. How do I stand out through all the clutter?
Well, the reason I asked that is, we're already thinking about the next topic, and the next topic is, so you want to be an entrepreneur. And I think the issues of talent, which is, spelled out clearly in every interview we're doing right now with the CEOs, issues of capital. So at the third Friday, I guess in August, we're going to take Jerry Callahan, who runs ISI. They went out and they just raised $5 million. They've been here at the flagship, and all the challenges. So basically, so it's kind of funny, when I talk to him, he says, "So do they want to work 24/7?" And that's the thing is, there's a little bit of what I'm finding since we've been doing this since 2000 is entrepreneurship seems to be glamorized, and we're kind of glossing over these hard damn issues that are really painful to deal with. And
You should title it "Why Entrepreneurship is Not Sexy."
Well, exactly.
It's not.
It is not sexy. You're exactly right. And I read I read Levi's interview this morning actually, and he says unless you're willing to think about it 24/7, you shouldn't be doing it. And that's kind of that's me. 3 hours of sleep. And then I was in Beaufort yesterday back, hosting folks 11 o'clock last night. Here I am. And just slammed day to day. 5 o'clock with the city of Beaufort, 10 people coming in. And my rhythm basically is at 3 o'clock I go off, and then I come back up on about 7. So it's just this notion. But I think it's important. We're going to try and get Levi as well. So we're going to take 3 companies. We're going to take Jerry's kind of in. We're going to talk to Levi. We're going to take Brian, whose company was purchased by Google. He worked for Google and then basically left the West Coast to come here and start a company called Waitlist Me. So these 3 guys basically are going to present. And I think as much as anything, I want to start defeating some of the myths, that kind of prevalent in this community about, we can't go get money or talent. I absolutely agree. Talent is an issue everywhere. So I was talking to a friend of mine in Connecticut. About 3 months ago, I was talking to someone in Oregon, a friend of mine who works for Nike, and he just said the same thing. So I don't think we should. The issue is not to basically keep hashing out. The issue, keep talking around the issue. The issue is how we address it. And so when we do have, maybe in September we do have, I want to know specifically for those people who say they're the talent game, what have they done for us lately, right? Including the CDC. So I think that's the issue. We can't get this sexy notion of, hey, you know how we're resolving it? got the Charleston Tech Slack group. You know, that was the last one I heard from somebody who's pretty playing this prominent role, and that was the input they had into research at, you know, Department of Commerce. So it's got to be a little more than that, you know. So I think, you know, this organization has always asked the hard, you know, questions and call out the people who have taken a lot of money in this community, receive a lot of money to do nothing, you know, or practically nothing, so to speak. They might be thinking they're doing a lot of stuff. So topics, you know, as the issues come up, you know, this is for you guys, right? So, you know, you let us know what. It was Joe O'Brien, basically, our technical director, basically said, hey man, let's do one in Slack. Because where the hell else, you know, are you going to get a presentation on Slack and the stuff, right? So that's the thing, you know, why don't you all let us know what we can put on, and we'll give you basically guys we know, you know, who have churned through this stuff and actually done it and been successful. So Brian hasn't raised, but Brian's getting a raise, and you know, he's in the process. But the other two guys have raised, you know, so the challenges and that kind of thing. But it goes back to, you know, Michael's identified and it's come up basically, hiring and then keeping, you know, good people and that kind of thing. So appreciate you guys coming out. These are all made online, so if you didn't come to one last month, they're in there for the last 3 years. You know, Mike's been recording these, and just go to Fridays at the Corridor. If you got a topic you'd like, very simply, just send to Fridays at Charleston Data Court. You know, that it just gets right to us, and you know, we know to kind of tee it up. But I think August is kind of set, and then in September we'll probably move back to sort of a more technical topic and go from there. But I really appreciate Mindy taking the time, and Russell. They were both, you know, right on the spot. You know, it was nice to see the different styles of presenting, and I hope you all got something out of it. Thank you.